It's a well-known fact that Kiwis have been at the forefront of outdoor adventure ever since they first set foot on Aotearoa. Sir Edmund Hillary is testament to that. But perhaps one of the least well-known of all these outdoor exploits is in the field of endurance cycling. Although this is a relatively recent addition to the portfolio of cycling events, its origins can be traced back further than you may think. In 1887, on New Zealand's South Island, a trio of riders, brothers AJ and HG Jackson, and photographer J. Alexander, took their Penny Farthings coast to coast from Christchurch on the then newly opened coach road to the west coast. The journey was superbly documented by Alexander and is preserved in a family photo album, now held in the Alexander Turnbull Library in Wellington. The trip of some 250 kilometres or so would have been made on dirt roads and through mountain passes. This was back in the days when the photographic equipment would have been heavy and cumbersome, with glass plate negatives and wooden tripods having to be transported along the way, adding to the planning and logistics of taking on such an arduous journey. The emergence of the safety bicycle became very popular in the late 1880s as an alternative to the penny farthing. With its two wheels the same size and a diamond-shaped frame, it was deemed safer than the penny farthing, and that basic shape has changed little since its conception. This change, in turn, offered up a whole new set of challenges, and a different breed of cyclist altogether was to emerge. In 1899, Kiwi brothers Frank and Alex White took on the 24-year-old Australian Arthur Richardson in a race that circumnavigated some 18,000 kilometres around Australia. Carrying no more than a swag and pistols, they would follow dirt tracks, cattle and camel pads and the night sky constellations as they battled thirst, hunger and exhaustion, as well as attacks from crocodiles and Aboriginal warriors. Richardson's descriptive account of his trip is still available as a publication under the title A Remarkable Ride. Richardson set a record for the trip of 243 days, which was broken 3 years later by fellow Aussie Donald Mackay by 3 days. Fast forward to October 2024, and the latest attempt at the circumnavigation of Australia saw a new record set by Lachlan Morton of 30 days, 9 hours and 59 minutes, beating the previous record set in 2011 by a whole week. The remarkable thing about this record is not that it was some 220 days faster than Arthur Richardson's original ride, but the pure fact that the journey was first attempted 125 years ago. Of course, one would expect that a record first set so long ago to be superseded. But even taking into account that Lachlan still had to ride his bike and turn the pedals daily, he ended up with an impressive average of 450 kilometres a day, showing just how far cycling has come. Arguably, Arthur Richardson's endeavour heralded the birth of what we refer to now as bikepacking. In Arthur Richardson's days, these adventurers were known as overlanders, which in simple terms refers to an overnight or multi-day adventure, carrying everything you need with you on the bike.
Bikepacking, to me, has a sense of minimalism to it. If you just take just enough, there's a huge amount of freedom that comes with that. And in New Zealand, you know, I always think about it in terms of going tramping or hiking, and just everything you need is you have with you and you carry with you. But you do it in a way that gives you a freedom to get into some amazing country. And I think bikepacking is the same concept for me.
This self-supported element is what separates bikepacking from the more traditional bike races. In bikepacking events, the clock never stops, as opposed to stage races like the Tour de France, where the riders are supported by a team of helpers and the clock stops after each day of racing. Having effectively disappeared for around 100 years, these self-supported bike races and record attempts have now come full circle. And this reborn bikepacking movement has led to ultra-endurance races such as the Tour Divide, the Colorado Trail Race, and the Silk Road Mountain Race, to name but a few, all of which have only just appeared on the scene this century. There is a certain irony that the early running of the Tour de France was more akin to modern bikepacking, where the stages were longer and the riders had to look after themselves to a bigger degree than that of the modern era. Modern bikepacking races can be anywhere between a few hundred kilometres and up to 5,000 or 6,000 kilometres. The recently added 12,500 kilometre Trans-Canada bike race can be seen as an exceptional case. Of course, the biggest distinction is that these events are all currently amateur-based and therefore open to anybody. Although some may be by ballot or by limited numbers, there are so many events to choose from these days that it is not hard to put yourself on the start line of an endurance race. Despite being relatively new on the scene, these long-distance events have taken on their own identities, and although they all come under the general bikepacking umbrella, they can be broken down into separate categories. The word brevet derives from the military, meaning a warrant or certificate that awards a commissioned officer a higher rank title as a reward for outstanding service. A cycling brevet is traditionally a timed long-distance road cycling event. The brevet certificate refers to the card carried by riders, which usually gets stamped at checkpoints along the way. The European Transcontinental Race is probably the most well-known of all checkpoint races, and was established by the late Mike Hall in 2013. Some brevets, like New Zealand's Tour Aotearoa, rely on photo checkpoints, as well as having a mandatory sleep period of 6 hours every 24-hour period. Races referred to as ultra races or ultra endurance are more likely to be races without these limits, and will be on a continuous clock that never stops. While most brevets let their participants plot their own routes via the checkpoints, ultra-endurance races will often have a specific course which must be followed 100% of the way. However, it seems to be the Tour Divide that was first run in 2008 that ignited the bikepacking scene, and where once again you can find New Zealanders at the forefront of tackling these ultra-race challenges.
It started really early on. It must have been early to mid-2000s, where there were murmurs on this bike website called Vorb. It was a quite active cycling forum back then, and someone posted up on there this amazing ride. It was kind of mind-blowing how long it was. It was the Great Divide, and a lot of people were active on that Vorb community, one of them being Simon Kennett, who was really a pioneer of bikepacking in New Zealand. And he was one of the brave ones who signed up for this Great Divide, and he went over there and he crushed it, and he did amazing and kind of proved that these things weren't just dreaming that we could do them. And it was those early Kiwi brevets that Simon and his brothers set up and ran that really helped me catch the bug. And from then it was more Kiwi brevets, a Great Southern Brevet, and then ultimately the Tour Divide, which I raced in 2012 and had the record for a few months.
Over the last 10 years or so, these multi-distance events have multiplied, and you can now be spoilt for choice the whole year round. You only need to scroll through the events page on bikepacking.com to witness this. Most countries have added their own divide trail, and new events continue to emerge year on year. As the industry in general expands, it's become apparent that the improvements in equipment and clothing have benefited the bikepacking and ultra-cycling world, giving them a better opportunity to push the boundaries of going faster for longer under their own steam. This is exactly what the organisers of bikepacking events worldwide have tapped into, and this has been translated into faster and new record times in most events. Ollie Wally finished the Tour Divide of 2012 in 16 days. As of 2024, that record is now 3 whole days faster, with the new benchmark set at 13 days. Of note is the increased presence of women on the ultra race scene, competing against the men on a level playing field. German medical student Fiona Kolbinger became the first woman to win the 7th edition of the Transcontinental Race. The 24-year-old finished in front of 225 men and 39 women to win the ultra cycling contest across Europe. This new discipline has spawned a new method of following the races. It is now possible to track the riders live, minute by minute, through dedicated websites and real-time tracking software. This also allows the riders involved to keep track of their own position in the race as well. Websites like dotwatcher.cc also integrate the riders' own social media posts into their coverage, giving a completely new take on ultra race coverage. Brian Alder established the Tour to Waipunamu as a New Zealand equivalent of these ultra races so that people could experience the New Zealand backcountry at first hand.
There's a bunch of bikepacking events around the world at the moment which are really trying to get into the mountain biking terrain and off the dirt road, and there's some that famously do it really well, like the Colorado Trail Race and the Highland Trail Race in particular. Having had some experience with those courses, it's like, I think we can emulate something like that in New Zealand.
"2023 saw New Zealander Joe Nation claim a podium spot on the Tour Divide, finishing 3rd in a strong field. Joe and close friend Rufus Wenlock started pushing their own boundaries in the field of ultra cycling. The Christchurch pair came 1st and 2nd in one of their first competitive bikepacking events when Joe won the Great British Divide, with Rufus close behind in 2nd. They repeated the same result in New Zealand's toughest bikepacking ultra, the Tour to Waipunamu, in January 2024, which was followed in August of the same year when Joe won the Silk Road Mountain Race and Rufus finished in 3rd. While the event side of bikepacking continues to grow, so does the day-to-day riding aspect without the need to enter into an organised event. It is safe to say that just as much enjoyment can be had by setting your own goals and having your own adventure. Whether to merely challenge yourself, or perhaps to simply take bike touring to a more intense level, there are many opportunities to get out into nature, even more so now this new era of cycling has dawned.
So bikepacking for me is like being a homeless person and going for adventures and just putting aside all these modern comforts that we come to rely upon that have really softened us, and really getting in touch with that fundamental evolutionary thing of how we survived as a race. was travelling long distances, hunting down animals not from speed but from just pure endurance and being able to wear them down. And I find myself really connecting with, you know, what humans are and what is the purpose of us when I'm out doing these adventures.